afternoon, good morning, and good evening, everyone. Those who have joined from different parts of the world. And our heartfelt prayers to everyone in the Middle East. I'm Padmapriya Suresh. Along with me is Umayal Subramaniam. We are here today to present a workshop on storytelling in verse. I'm an educator and storyteller based out of Chennai, and through my venture Story Basket, which is an online venture, I educate children through stories. Umayal is an early childhood educator and a storyteller based out of Thanjavur. Through her venture Kindergarten Chronicles, she works at grassroots level to engage, entertain, and educate the children. We both often do storytelling and workshops together, and we enjoy doing that. Previously, we had done tandem events like poetry writing workshop, story writing workshop, storytelling, etc. And today we are very happy to present before you the art of storytelling in verse. And I welcome you all once again. Over to Umyal.
So, what is storytelling in verse? Storytelling in verse is also called as narrative poetry. So, it uses the elements of poetry in storytelling. So, what are the main elements of poetry? That is, it's a rhythmic language, the timing patterns of the language, that is the stressed and the unstressed syllables, and the pace of the language we use. This storytelling in verse, it is done because of the beats, musical beats, the strong beats and the weak beats that is found in the poetry we write. So English, as you can see, is a language that is stress timed. There are syllables that are stressed, there are syllables that are not stressed. But there are some languages which give equal importance to all the syllables, like French or Spanish. It is a syllable based language. English is a stress based language. So because of the stressed and unstressed syllables, we can create a musical effect while writing. So this stress time helps us convey emotions and it helps us to emphasize what we want to tell them. So there's a musical connection between the verses and what we are trying to convey. So the understanding of the rhythm of the language is very important and it aids in creating a narrative poetry. So now I want you all to think and on a piece of paper write down your own definitions for the following words. Poems. What does a poem mean to you? What does a verse mean to you? And what does rhyme mean to you? And what does rhythm mean to you?
Important to know is that it is extremely cheap to produce. It is between something like 20,000.
So can any one of you unmute and tell us what you've written?
Should I go?
Yes, yes, please.
So you may find it very basic since I'm not a student of literature anymore and I'm not a poet or a writer anymore. So for me, poem is a lyrical expression that my heart wants to express, um, which can be sung as well. That's how I look at poetry. Verse for me looks like it has a some metrical rhythm. Some meter is there for each verse. That's how I think it is. Rhyme is again a pattern, how each line in a poem ends. So, what I remember from my literature class was A, B, B, A, B, A, B. There's different patterns in which how a line ends and how it rhymes at the end of each poem. Then is rhythm, which is the musical quality of a poem, which or a song, which has audible beats and something that you can hear, like it has some beats in it. That's how I look at it. Yeah. Thank you.
You are not a literature person. You are, of course. Yes, Umayal.
Anyone else wants to go? Okay. So a poem is a piece of writing that is arranged in short lines. So it expresses thoughts and feeling with the help of the sound and rhythm. So rhyme is a basic sound that is same as another. And a rhythm is a regular repeated pattern of sound. And verse is writing arranged in a metrical rhythm and typically having a rhyme. So now we are going to combine all this into a story. So that is what we'll be learning in this. We'll be learning about how to create, analyze, narrate, and reflect to tell an engaging, meaningful story in verse.
As Umayal said, let's get into what a narrative poetry is. Storytelling in verse is nothing but narrative poetry. A storytelling which is done in a poetic form. We all love to read poems, we all love to listen to music, and what storytelling is done in the form of poetry. So, all the children, adults, and everybody would love to listen to that story and keep it in their memory for so long, right? So before getting into this, let's now get into an interactive mode. Can somebody tell me the structure of the story or the elements of the story? What should a story have? You can unmute and talk, or if you are not comfortable talking, you can type the answers in the chat box. We'll take up one or two and then we'll move on. As the structure of the story or what does a story contain? What do you have in a story? What do you have in a story? When you want to try
A beginning,
character,
an interesting plot in the middle, which has some different characters or scenes, and ending in a simple form.
well done, well done. This is what is the very basic structure of the story. Thank you so much, and thank you, Shivali, also uh, for the typing in the chat box. A story has plot, characters, conflict, resolution. What are elements of poetry? Like you saw now, rhyme, rhythm, stanza, repetition, simile, metaphor, and some sound devices like alliteration, assonance, and consonance. These are all elements of poetry. So, what if we combine the structure of the story and the elements of poetry together. That's what is narrative poetry or storytelling in verse. Now, for example, you use a simile or a metaphor like diamond in the sky. In Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, we all have studied Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, how I wonder what you are above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky. The star is compared to a diamond that are twinkling in the sky. The use of the word like is the simile. And you all know well-known phrase, the world is a stage. It's a metaphor where we are comparing two unlike things, world and stage. So when we use all these elements along with a rhyme, may it be an end rhyme or an alternate rhyme. Rhyme in simple terms means rhyming words at the end of a sentence or in the alternate sentences, if we use rhyming words, if we have a rhythm, if we repeat certain words for emphasizing the ideas and to make the poetry memorable, if we use similes like an as, or if we introduce metaphors, or if we use imagery, the descriptive words, then the story becomes narrative poetry. In a story, we write paragraphs. We write it as sentences. But what if we give line breaks? What if we write it as the shorter lines? One, two, three, four, a gap. One, two, three, four, a gap. That's called stanza. So these line breaks helps the readers to slow down and read the lines with the rhythm and the beat. The structure of a story is now combined with the elements of poetry to create verse stories. Now, let's move on to the next slide where I am going to show you a poetry written by Robert Frost, Dust of Snow. The way a crow shook down on me the dust of snow from a hemlock tree has given my heart a change of mood and saved some part of a day I had rued. Can someone type in the chat box or unmute and tell us the rhyming words that you find in this poem?
Can I go?
Yes, please.
Crow, snow would be rhyming.
Yes.
Me, tree would be rhyming in a way, but not completely. Heart and part would be rhyming.
Well done. Well done. Thank you so much. Now, I want, can we move to the next slide? I want somebody to read the explanation of this poem. Can somebody read?
Can I go?
Mm. Yeah, please go ahead.
On a snowy winter day, I was sitting under a hemlock tree. I was sad and I felt depressed. There was a crow sitting on one of the branches. The crow shook its wing and the dust of snow fell on me. This changed my mood and made me happy. It saved me from wasting my remaining part of life.
That's all. It's self-explanatory. Umayal, can you go back to the previous slide? Okay. The entire part, the statements, the prose, the paragraph is now given here using rhyming words and using line breaks. Can you see that? The way a crow shook down on me. What did it shook down? What did it shake? Dust of snow. From where? Hemlock tree. And what has happened to the poet, to the narrator? It has changed his mood and it has saved his day. It's very simple, easily understandable, right? So, this all narrative poems need not rhyme. They could be written in free verse without any rhyme and rhythm. But if we use rhyme, rhythm, and repetition, that makes the listener more exciting. And there are no rules about how many stanzas should be there in a narrative poetry. You can add some dialogues also in between. Generally, there is a single speaker who is the narrator. Sometimes there could be more than one character. In that cases, this narrative poetry becomes dramatic poetry. So, how did this narrative poetry originate? From where did it originate? Yes, narrative poetry is nothing but the very ancient form of storytelling. It generated from the oral traditions of telling stories. Those days, Ancient days, long, long ago, stories were not written. We didn't have the scripts, we didn't have literature, we didn't have writing. They were spoken, they were chanted, they were sung, they were recited. So, using rhyme, rhythm, and repetition, the stories were easy to memorize in the form of poetry, and the oral stories in the form of poems spread to different parts of the world, and also it descended down across generations. Do you know Ramayana, Mahabharata, Iliad, Odyssey? All these are narrative poetry. We have narrative poetry from Granthas, from ancient Puranas. Geoffrey Chaucer is the father of narrative poetry, and his famous work is the Canterbury Tales. It is nothing but anthology of 24 short stories written as verse. Now, I am going to read you out a narrative poetry titled The Ballad of the Harp Weaver. And can you have to listen to it? You have to listen to it and tell me what it talks about. Or you can also talk about the emotion that it conveys. The poem is titled as The Ballad of the Harp Weaver. Son, said my mother, when I was knee high, you have need of cloths to cover you, and not a rag have I. Son, said my mother, when I was knee high, you have need of cloths to cover you, not a rag have I. There is nothing in the house to make a boy breeches. There is nothing in the house to make a boy breeches, not shears to cut a cloth with, nor thread to take stitches. Not shears to cut a cloth with, nor thread to take stitches. So this is the poem. This is a ballad. Can somebody say what it conveys quickly? Let's take one response.
Does the poem, is it anywhere on the slides? Because we could not follow when you were reading it. I mean, when you were, yeah, is it
Okay.
somewhere in the slide where you can see
No,
that?
it's not in the slide. I just wanted you all to listen to it because the narrative poetry originated from oral traditions of, reciting a poem. So we wanted to try making you listen and then decode.
In that case, you will
Maybe,
have to repeat it, Padmapriya.
okay, yes, I'll do it once. Son, said my mother, when I was knee high, you have need of cloths to cover you. Not rag have I. There's nothing in the house to make a boy breeches, not shears to cut a cloth with, nor thread to take stitches. Anyone who would like to try to decode? Okay.
Looks like it's a conversation between a mother and a son, and looks like the child is growing up. And while she's talking about the son and the cloth and the height and all of it, there is somewhere context with in context of how maybe life and experience have to be stitched together. That is what I could make it out. Nothing more.
Thank you, Shivali. Yes, it's of course a dialogue, a conversation. It's spoken by the mother to the son, and uh, in her after years, when she was young, she didn't have any cloth nor thread to stitch trousers for the boy, and she was explaining that to the boy. So this is how a small uh, piece of sadness and emotion can be easily captured and written through poetry, narrative poetry. Yeah, we'll go to the next slide. Yeah. So how is it going to benefit us as storytellers? What are we going to do with narrative poetry? When we say a story as a poetry, we can easily convey complex narratives or emotions within fewer words. And when we use rhyme, rhythm, and imagery, it helps the audience to connect emotionally. It makes them feel the story deeply. And we have the show, don't tell, where we use sensory details, the words that are expressing body language, like blushing. And when you read the word blushing, you know what it is. You blush. You feel like the character is blushing. Sweating. You feel there is a humid climate and it's very hot over there. It helps the readers to experience the situation. In a normal telling, we just tell line by line what has happened, how the character feels. Whereas the narrative poetry, we just use few words. We use show, don't tell techniques. Now, again, I'm going to make you listen to a paragraph and you have to listen to whatever I'm telling and find out about what am I talking about. The skin resists the blunt knife, dimpling slightly before bursting open in a splatter of red liquid all over my hands, all over the kitchen counter. What's inside us is worse. A viscous mess of seeds and soggy flesh that oozes across my plate and turns into a fragrant mush in my mouth. It is not the taste, but the texture that makes me long to spit it out. Any guesses about it? Is a fruit. I'll give you a clue. It's a fruit. I said red liquid all over the kitchen counter, mess of seeds, soggy flesh. What could it be?
Watermelon.
Good guess, but still a whisked mess of seeds. It's a good guess. Splatter of red liquid. Maybe you can think of another fruit. There is not berry. There is a dilemma whether it is a fruit or vegetable, and it's still going on.
We have an
Tomato.
answer. It's the pomegranate.
Tomato.
Tomatoes.
Tomatoes. Right. Okay. But pomegranate and watermelon. Yes. Good guesses. So the elements of poetry makes narrative poetry more memorable, and we can discuss about these elements of poetry later. Next slide, please.
So what are the benefits to the listeners? So first, poetry is like a mnemonic device. So do you know what is mnemonic device? Anyone?
Based on codes.
Yeah, it's based on codes. It's sort of a code. Poetry is sort of a code to remember things. So a mnemonic device is like Vibgyor. Vibgyor, you know, violet, indigo, blue, green, yellow, orange, and red. And there is one very famous mnemonic to remember the names of the planet. My very educated mother just served us nachos. So this gives you the first letters of all the planets: Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. So poetry is like that. It is like a mnemonic device. It helps us remember the story easily. And this remembrance of the story helps us recall the events or the facts or the science that is hidden in the story or the moral values hidden in the story. It helps in easy recall. And it also helps children understand language rhythm. And it also helps us convey emotions and expressions that is otherwise hard to decode for children. For example, grief. So when it is said in a poetic way, like the rhymes of Humpty Dumpty. So it goes, Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall, Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All, all the king's men and all the king's horses couldn't put Humpty Dumpty together again. So it's broken, someone's injured. That is something the child understands, and it is like the grief they can understand through a small rhyme. So not only just grief, frustration, desire, greed, melancholy. So children mostly understand happiness, sadness. So two things they easily understand, and anger is one more thing they understand easily. Other emotions to reach out to them through musical storytelling, poetical storytelling, verse storytelling we can do. And another benefit to the children is it helps in cognitive thinking skill. So once they're listening to the verse storytelling, prediction is there. So the prediction of the narrative, what comes next? So will the story go this way or will the story go that way? And it also helps them compare the story to their own life, daily, what is happening through in everyday life. So it helps them compare. And listening to musical stories also help them focus and concentrate. Like just now Padmapriya narrated. So when you didn't focus, you were not able to understand what she said. So this develops focus and concentration. And for the listeners, it gives rooms for multiple interpretations. What is my perspective is different from what is your perspective. So that is something the child understands very well. How we align with the verse. So there are 300 versions of Ramayana written by scholars. But still, there are new versions coming out. Ramayana from the perspective of Rama, from the perspective of Ravana, from the perspective of Sita, from the perspective of Urmila. So for each of the person, when you read a poetry, the perspective is different and it helps you uh, decode it and recode it into your own version. And then story and poetry together, it is very delightful. It gives you a sensory experience. There's musicality, there is rhythm, and there is verse. So the verses, they affect the body directly. So when you listen to a song, your body moves to the rhythm. So when you listen to a story in verse, it affects the body in the similar way. So they're mesmerizing and spellbinding when you listen. And story and rhymes together makes literature accessible. So some children, many children, after the impact of the pandemic, they are adverse to reading. So they can't read pages and pages and pages. So in this situation, poetry helps very much. Poetic storytelling helps very much. So the dense prose, the number of pages that is being read. So the complexity is reduced when we do it through poetic storytelling. And then there is cultural and historical connection. So as Padmapriya said, we have been following the oral tradition in getting the knowledge across to the different generations. So in this, all the cultural and heritage is passed on through stories. For example, in my community, women don't wear anklets. So this is related to the epic of Silapadikaram in Tamil. So that the main female lead, Kannagi, she was accused of stealing the king's anklet. And when it was proved that she didn't steal it, she swore that she'll never wear anklets. And till now, in my community, people don't wear anklets because of this historical reference. And the listeners learn cultural values through this verse storytelling. They learn moral lessons and they learn about their own history also through verse storytelling. So now we're going to do another exercise. So this is a poem by William Wordsworth. This is called The Solitary Reaper. It was written in 1803. So William Wordsworth, this is not a first-hand experience of William Wordsworth. He listened to one of his friends, Thomas Wilkinson, who had traveled through the Scottish Highlands in that year, tell him about the seeing what he saw. So when that was narrated to him, sort of a story, and he made it into a poem. So this is one story, one poem that I was mesmerized with when I was in class 6. My love for poetry started with this. And this poem is a lyrical ballad. It has 4 stanzas. So this is how the first stanza starts. Behold her, single in the field, yon solitary highland lass, weeping and singing by herself, stop here or gently pass. Alone she cuts and winds the grain and sings a melancholy strain. Oh, listen, for the vale profound is overflowing with sound. So I want you all to write a 3-line story. What you can understand from this poem. We'll take around 3 minutes for this. and then we'll get back. So we have an answer for the examples. Rashmi says, it's a story of a solitary reaper who does all the work by herself while she sings a sad song. But she has lots to sing that tells her story of being alone. Swati says, the crop was ready to be cut. The farmer's wife took upon herself to cut the crop all by herself. The songs were her companion. All along the hard work. So now we see two different perspectives for the same lines. So this is how a poem gives a different perspective to everybody reading, while a prose is like it is set that you cannot change the meaning.
How we are going to write a narrative poetry. So a narrative poem is usually in the present tense, in first person, but it can also be in multiple points of view, like a dialogue in between, as I said before. Before getting into the examples of narrative poetry, let's see how we can write narrative poetry. So I'm reiterating it again and again. I'm telling that to combine the structure of the story with the elements of poetry so that we get a narrative poetry or storytelling or a story in verse. For that, the first point is to choose the topic about which we are going to talk about what the story is going to be. So choose the topic, then sketch the plot, beginning, middle, and end. So you have to write the plot. Next one is to determine the speaker. It could be the narrator or a third person. If it's a narrator, then while penning down, you will have to use I or me. If it's a third person, we'll have to use he, him, she, her, etc. So after choosing a topic, after writing the plot, beginning, middle, and end, let's determine the speaker and write story as a prose, as paragraph. And while writing the story, we are going to sequence the events. First, second, next, after that, and the ending. So we are going to write the story as a paragraph. So till now, we have a structure for a normal story. Now, we are going to add poetic elements. What are the poetic elements? Rhyme. So choose and incorporate rhyming words. Rhythm, the beat, repetition. If you want to emphasize an idea, if you want to emphasize on certain parts of the story, certain words, pick those words and use them in repetition. And then add some sound devices. That's nothing but music to the words. Alliteration, assonance, and consonance, about which Umayal will be explaining later. Add similes and metaphors. As I said before, like a diamond in the sky, the world is a stage. Just expand, be more descriptive, use imagery to evoke senses, and you can also add some dialogues in between. Then you can split the entire prose after adding rhyming words, after adding repetitive words, after adding the sound devices, similes and metaphors wherever necessary, and descriptive imagery and little dialogues. You can decide on the line breaks. Remember, I told you that entire paragraph is now split into different lines, short lines. Using rhyming words, we are going to end the line, or we can also use the rhyming words in between. So we are going to break the paragraph into small, shorter lines and decide on the number of stanzas. Always remember the first line of narrative poetry should hook the readers to your poetry. That is, it should make the readers stay back till you finish the story in verse. So it's very easy. Choose a topic, plot, choose the speaker, write the story as a paragraph, add all the poetic elements, and then use line breaks to cut short the entire paragraph into smaller lines. If you want, add dialogues in between and make them, group them into stanzas. How many of the stanzas you want, you can have. And always remember to have the first line as the hook. It's very important to make the readers stay back. This is how you write a narrative poetry. There is no magic that you have to pen down as a poetry itself. Write it as a prose and then make it as a poetry. There are different types of narrative poetry. Rhymes is a narrative poetry. Epics, Ramayana, Mahabharata, all narrative poetry. Ballads, idylls, sonnets, they're all narrative poetry. Ballad is a long poem that tells a story often about love. We saw one ballad, the Ballad of Harp Weaver, a dialogue between mother and the son. I've given an excerpt for you to listen. You know, epics, Mahabharata and Ramayana, they are all narrative poetry. Mahabharata comprises 1.8 million words and 1 lakh verses. And it talks about 18-day war between the Pandavas and Kauravas for the throne of Hastinapura. It was written in Sanskrit by sage Vyasa and it was written in poetic format, in the form of verses. It conveys the entire war scenario and it also features the holy book Bhagavad Gita. And Mahabharata is 10 times longer than Iliad and Odyssey combined together. We have one more type of narrative poetry called idyll. Like picture. Idyll means a little picture which describes a peaceful countryside. They're all short poems. They celebrate the culture and the country lifestyles. And this genre started in Greek and Roman times. So there are different types of narrative poetry. One very famous type of narrative poetry is the picture book. You all have seen picture books for children, and they convey a story in the form of poetry along with illustrations. So let's move on to the next slide. Okay, Umayal will be explaining some more points about how to write a narrative poetry.
So there are 3 steps to follow when you write a narrative poetry. First, you narrate, then you analyze, and then you reflect. So first we saw about the solitary reaper. So solitary reaper has 4 stanzas. So the stanza 1, it sets the scene where it is happening, what is happening. And stanza 2, it heightens the emotion. So in that stanza, the poet will be comparing the voice of the singer to that of the cuckoo and the nightingale. And then the third stanza, it reflects the theme of the poem. So it is like he's speculating what would have happened, why is she so sad? So the sadness and melancholiness that is portrayed in the third stanza. And the fourth stanza, it, it is all about the impact it has created on the poet and the conclusion. So he says, the music in my heart I bore long after it was heard no more. So even though he couldn't hear the music physically, but he could hear it in his heart. So it has that much of an impact on him, that thing. So even when we listen to reading of a poetry or a story in form of poetry, the impact is much more than just when we hear a story. So all these 4 things, when we set the scene, when we narrate, so we have to introduce the character. The encounter is usually a single narrator. Like Padmapriya already said, there's one narrator or one speaker. Dialogues are there, but the dialogues are on the perspective of the narrator. Very rarely, third person narrative is done. Next thing is analysis. So when you analyze, you compare and speculate. The emotions, the imaginations, all that you come into it when you analyze. So in this analysis, you find out what is the rising action you can give and what is the climax you can give. So at this point, it is better to incorporate alliteration, assonance, and consonance. So what is alliteration? The stressed beginning sounds like swift, sour, sight, sweet. The same beginning sounds makes it alliteration. Assonance. Assonance is the same middle sounds. For example, feed, lead, deep, keen. So the middle sound is the same. And then consonants. Consonants are similar sounding words. Bed, bad, red, read. So all that, if you incorporate, it'll be better. And then you reflect. Think deeply about what you have written. So what you have written, does it convey what you want to convey? Or what the story conveys doesn't convey what you want to convey. So accordingly, you can reflect and you can change. So Padmapriya was talking about all the types of poetry. So ballad. So how do you write a ballad? It is folk based. So ballad should be put into a song. It should be, we should be able to sing it like a song. So ballad has 4-line stanzas and they are called as quatrains. So they should have a rhyme scheme, either AB or ABCB. And the epic, it focuses on the hero's journey. This is the protagonist and his journey you follow throughout the story. That's called an epic. And then novel, verse novel. So it's a complex story. It has all parts of a story and it is like she told, Geoffrey Chaucer's verse tales. They're short stories. But longer ones also can be written. The whole novel can be written in verse. Shakespeare plays are a good example for that. And Idyll. Idyll is a focused narrative. It's a small poem, 12 or 15 lines, and it focuses on romance and adventure. Now, I will be showing you a video of a picture book. And then please listen carefully, and then we'll give you an exercise on it.
Oh, the sound is not coming. When you go into screen share, you have to click share computer sound. So maybe close the screen share and come back in. And when you're coming in, click share computer sound.
Is your mama a llama? I asked my friend Dave. No, she is not, is the answer that Dave gave. She hangs by her feet and she lives in a cave. And I do not believe that's how llamas behave. Oh, I said, you're right about that. I think that your mama sounds more like a bat. Said I think that your mama sounds more like a bat. Is your mama a llama? I asked my friend Fred. No, she is not. No, she is not, is what Freddie said. She has a long neck and white feathers and a pair of wings. I don't think that a llama has all of those things. Oh, I said, you don't need to go on. I think that your mama, she must be a swan. Oh, I think that your mama, she must be a swan. Is your mama a llama? I asked my friend Jane. No, she is not. No, she's not. Jane politely explained. She grazes on grass and she likes to say moo. And I don't think that is what a llama would do. Oh, I said, I understand now. And I think that your mama, she must be a cow. Said I think that your mama, she must be a cow. And is your mama a llama? I asked my friend Clyde. No, she's not. She's not, is how Clyde replied. She's got flippers and whiskers and she eats fish all day. I do not think llamas act quite in that way. Oh, I said, I'm beginning to feel that your mama must really be a seal. That your mama must really be a seal. And is your mama a llama? I asked my friend Rhonda. No, she is not, is how Rhonda responded. She's got big hind legs and a pocket for me. So I don't think a llama is what she could be. Oh, I said that is certainly true. And I think that your mama's a kangaroo. Oh, I think that your mama is a kangaroo, yeah. Is your mama a llama? I asked my friend Lynn. Oh Lord, don't be silly, Lynn said with a grin. My mama has big ears, long lashes and fur, and you of all people should know about her. Our mamas belong to the same herd, and you know all about llamas, 'cause you are one too. Yes, you are right. I said to my friend, my mama is a llama, and this is the end. Oh, my mama is a llama, and this is the end. Said my mama is a llama, and this is the end.
So I hope you all enjoyed listening to this rendition of a picture book. So these are the questions you will be responding to after listening to this. Write down some of your ideas about this rhyming picture book. What you enjoyed? What would you improve? Examples of repetition, examples of rhyming, and interpretation. So we'll have 5 minutes for that. And if you want the script, it is there on the screen.
Could you get back to the slide which had questions that we were supposed to answer? Could you take us back to this poem, please? Sorry.
Is anyone ready to share? So what did you enjoy in this story? Either the song or when you read it, what did you enjoy?
Shivali has commented saying it was lovely, both the text and the presentation. That is what she has enjoyed. And what would you improve? Nothing. Don't want to spoil the experience. It was perfect. And she's given examples for repetition: mama, lama, I, you, etc. And rhyming words: wink, think, cave, Dave, gave, all that. Shishma Tripathi says, I enjoyed the rhythm and the rhyme. If you want to unmute and talk, you can talk. Okay.
Yeah, this is a picture book that will stay with children for a long time, whether they read it or they listen to it. So that's how catchy our storytelling is. And Sushma says maybe I would love to add a mystical creature or animal, probably maybe a unicorn or a dragon or something like that. Swati says the poetic indirection of the symbolism was great. Repetition and rhyming was very connecting. Yes, very true. So now we'll be moving on with different types of storytelling in verse. Padmapriya will run us through.
Okay. So I've given an excerpt from Odyssey. Odyssey is 12,000 line Greek, ancient Greek poem. It talks about the 10-year journey of the hero, Odysseus. He is the king of Ithaca, and he was returning from the Trojan War. So this is one excerpt. Here he talks about how all the other soldiers are, those who fought in the Troy War. Speak, immortal one, and tell the tale once more in our time. By now, all the others who had fought at Troy, at least those who had survived the war and the sea, were safely back home. Only Odysseus still longed to return to his home, and his wife, the nymph Calypso, the powerful goddess and beautiful, was clinging to him in his caverns and yearned to possess him. So he talks about everybody after the effects of the war as he was returning back from the Trojan War. And this entire 12,000 line is a narrative poetry. Let's move on to the next slide.
So
Umayal,
this
would you
is
like to take this up?
about this is a epic in Tamil. This epic is called Silappadigaram, and this is a story based on the heroine Kannagi. So this is a excerpt from that. அடியிற்றனை வரசற் குணர்த்தி வடிவேல் எறிந்த வான்பகை பொறாது பருளி ஆற்றின் பன்மழை எடுக்கத்து குமரி கோடு கொடுங்கடல் கொள்ள வடதிசை கங்கையும் இமயமும் கொண்டு தென் திசை ஆண்ட தென்னவன் வாழி. So this talks about the great flood. So which took off a lot of the Pandya kingdom. So he says, even though the great flood took off the whole of the kingdom, you took the southern kingdom of Pandya to the northern region of Himalayas to replace the lost territory. So he talks about what happened and now what is happening. So this is a short story he conveys within the 4 lines.
The famous Mahabharata. You all know this is Bhagavad Gita, chapter 11, verse 10 to 15. You can move to the next slide, Umyal. Okay. So this chapter 11 explains the Vishwarupa Darshanam of Krishna, Lord Sri Krishna, and how it's been explained through verse. This is like imagery. You can visualize Lord Krishna having so many mouths and eyes and, with so many divine adornments, divine weapons uplifted, garlands and apparel, and how powerful he is to see. Even he says 1,000 suns would blaze out simultaneously in the sky. That would be the splendor of that mighty being. So this chapter 11 talks about imagery of Lord Krishna when he shows his Vishwarupa Darshana. He says the entire world is in me. Go ahead, Arjuna. I've already taken up the entire people, entire Kauravas in me. So you are just an instrument. You are just a weapon to kill them. That's all. So this is the perfect example of imagery and visualization. You can move ahead, Umyal. And this is a very famous Shakespeare's sonnet. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Yeah, next slide. This is a idyll by William Blake. Idyll, as we said before, is a short story said in the form of poem, and it always expresses the countryside, the life of countryside. Here it talks about shepherd and the lambs. Next slide, please. This is a very famous, my favorite rhymes. Mary had a little lamb, Hushaby baby, and hot cross buns. These are the examples that we have given. So all these convey a story in the form of rhyme. Even today, we remember this because the story has been told us through a rhyme. So that's the power of narrative storytelling. So let's move on to story arc. We all have learned how to combine the elements of story, write it in a paragraph and cut it short, and then make a narrative poetry. But very importantly, we'll have to look at certain elements of story as well as poetry. So this is the story arc. It's also called a narrative arc. So in this story arc, we have the backbone of the story. We have exposition where the story actually starts. It's the beginning where the story actually starts. The seeds of conflict are sowed here, characters are introduced, mood and setting, they're all set properly. And then comes the rising action. In the rising action, what we do, the conflict, the seed that we have sowed, right, that blooms, conflict arises. And then comes the climax where we make decisions, conclusions. There could be fights, discussions, there could be war, arguments, anything can happen in the climax. And then we have falling action. This is not compulsory, but we'll have to make people more comfortable with the situation, what has happened after the climax. And then comes denouement, the final conclusion, the resolution, happiness or sadness, emotion, how the readers take it, how the listeners take it. So this story arc should be very clear. It should have a clear beginning, middle, and end, and should be presented in sequence. And as we move to the types of narrative arcs, there are 6 primary types of narrative arcs, and they are really, really interesting to know. First one is from rags to riches. We have all seen in the movie that the entire setting will be like a poor family, and how the hero strives very hard to make his family rich. The next type could be riches to rags, the opposite of the first one. And then fall and rise and fall. We call it as Freytag's pyramid. And we have a Cinderella type of narrative arc where we have rise, fall, rise. We have Oedipus type where we have fall, rise, fall. These are all the types that you can use to develop your plot, to develop your story. where you can have a rise and then a fall of the hero and the entire character that are associated. There should be then a rise, then a fall. So it could be any type, but it should be very clear in the form of, sequencing of events. Yes, Umayal, you can proceed to the next one.
So if it's a prose, it is easier to write this. So for the introduction, you can start with once upon a time. And for rising action, you can say one day so and so happened. And then for action or the problem, you can say suddenly this happened and the setting changed. And for resolution, you can say he, she, or they tried to do this and solve the problem. And for the conclusion, you can say they lived happily ever after. But in poetry, it is not so simple. You have to create catchy lines in the beginning, middle, and end. So you have to provide context. It is important to provide context. So what is the setting? So you make sure you know what setting you're taking. You have to change the setting according to the audience. So what connects to a 3-year-old may not connect to a 13-year-old. So if you're going to say the story, how you're saying to a 3-year-old to a 13-year-old, they're just going to tell you this is so cringe. So that's a mistake many storytellers do. And then characters. Characters also, make sure the characters are age appropriate. How the child will understand, or how, if it's for adults, how the adults will understand. And the circumstances. So the circumstances also should make a connection with the audience. So the listener should be able to fully envision what you're telling, how the story is, and understand the story. So when you set all these elements, it will be easier for you to reach out to the audience.
So the next is, how do you plan your plot? Decide whether the conflict must be internal or external. Plot must always be driven by cause and effect. There are 5 principles for working on this plot. One is the goal. Second one is the antagonist. Third one is the conflict. And then the consequence and the change. Goal, antagonist, conflict, consequence, and the change. And as I told before, narrative poetry should definitely have a narrative hook at the beginning to just hold on to the reader's attention. So keep brainstorming about, have a goal and keep brainstorming the ideas how to construct a plot. Plots could be linear, progressive, like it can move from beginning to end. There could be a clear cause and effect sequences. Plots could also be loose plots, like there are incidents here and there, and then you connect them. Every plot will have a conflict and a resolution. When you have loosely connected different incidents, every incident will have a mini conflict and a mini resolution, and you put them together. There could also be parallel plots, two storylines woven together. They are going parallelly but linked by characters and a common theme. And there could also be my favorite, flashback plots. So you have a plot and then you have a flashback and then come back to the main plot. So we provide background events to understand the present story. So whatever you do, you keep age in mind, age of the readers in mind, and construct the plot appropriately.
Very important thing in verse storytelling is creating imagery with the sensory details. So as you create the story, if you write, it is better to write before you narrate. So when you write, all the 5 senses should be taken into account: the sight, hearing, taste, smell, and touch. So while narrating, you can create these details through your body language and through onomatopoeia. So that is the sounds that you make. For a taste, you can say yum, and for sight, you can say beautiful, and for the mostly for the sounds only onomatopoeia you can use. taste, and thing. Smell. Smell you can create by using your gestures, and touch. Also, you can do it by using your gestures. So, sight you can do it through your pitch, speed, and volume. How you narrate the story. It will create the imagery. So, if you want to create a fast moving plot, you say it fast with a louder voice. So you describe the visual, incorporate important sounds, and describe the flavors to immerse to your listener. Then you explore the sense relevant to the setting, and you explain textures, temperatures, sensations. We saw in the first poem by Robert Frost, The Hemlock. It's snowing, they're sitting under the tree, they're sad. So it gives all the things. The sight is there, the hearing is there, the taste is there, the smell is there, the touch is there. So that is how you get into all the details and create a full imagery for the listener.
This is a well-known story, The Greedy Dog. We have made it as a poetry. There was once a dog filled with greed, holding a bowl as his feed. Saw his reflection in the well where he peeped. He wanted much more than his need. Thus jumped inside the well with a great speed. Alas, he lost his life indeed. So it's a greedy dog, the story which is given using line breaks and lesser amount of words, using rhyming words at the end rhyme we have incorporated and made it as a rhyming story, which is a storytelling in verse. So you can also try yourself by writing a narrative poetry for a well-known story. So if you can try, send us later. It will be very happy for us, that we have learned something today.
If you like to try even now, story of Goldilocks or Red Riding Hood or Gingerbread Man, a very famous tale, or any of the Panchatantra tales, anything. If you can try, and it can take 5 minutes, and in 5 minutes, maybe we can see one or two poems.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Has the class started yet?
At 4 o'clock.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone ready with the poetry?
I have jotted down few lines. I'll just.
Yeah, please
Yeah,
go
please,
ahead.
please.
I'm not sure whether it would qualify what we were looking for, but something that
That's
just
okay.
came to my mind. From the shadowed path, a person came. Yum, Lord of the Death was his name. With gaze severe, he claimed Satyavan's soul with voice austere. Savitri, she rose and she followed still, across that path beyond the hill, chanting return. Said Yum, no mortal walks where souls have yet to be returned. I've just jotted down these few lines, so
Well done. Well,
thank you.
Anyone else? Okay.
so we would like to leave you with this image. So, what poetic story, a storytelling in verse, this image inspires you to? Please write it down, share it with us. So we'll give our mail IDs
In the chat box.
in the chat box.
You can take a print screen of this image, work on this later, write a narrative poetry, and send it to us.
So we'll leave this with a quote. Leave you all with this quote. Heard melodies are sweet, but those unheard are sweeter. So heard stories are sweet, but those unheard are sweeter. So all of you have stories inside you, which you have to bring it out. And I hope this workshop has been useful to you in helping you bring out the story inside you.
Poetry.
Thank you so
First.
much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Eric, for giving us this opportunity to present our thoughts on storytelling in verse.
Thank you. Very good. Okay, now I'll stop the recording.